So here's an illustration of the things that take place when a vessel is punctured. You first get platelets which congregate to form a plug at the site of the puncture, and then you get a cascade of enzymatic reactions resulting in the formation of fibrin threads, which then trap red blood cells. Hemophilia is a condition in which the that process is not functioning correctly. And hemophilia A is comprises of probably about 90% of all hemophilia cases. It occurs frequently in males since the faulty gene is on the X chromosome, and individuals with this condition are more prone to bleeding. Bleeding in the muscles can cause nerve damage, and bleeding in the brain can cause neurological damage or even death. And these individuals, they require frequent blood transfusions or injections of the deficient clotting factor so that the clotting mechanism can function a little more close to normal. So then we'll look at bone marrow stem cells. And a stem cell, you've probably heard about this. Stem cells, they have been much in the news of late. Somewhat controversial as well. However, use of stem cells in therapy holds a lot of promise in treating many conditions. So a stem cell is a cell that is capable of dividing and producing new cells that go on to differentiate into other specific specialized types of cells. And so it's often referred to as a multipotent type of a cell. So we have multipotent stem cells. And you can see from this diagram that they can go on to differentiate into many different types of cells. So on the left side we have the myeloid stem cells, which can differentiate into erythroblasts, which then become red blood cells or erythrocytes. Then we have the megakaryoblast, and which further differentiate into megakaryocytes, which then fragment and form platelets. We also have the myeloblasts, which differentiate into granular leukocytes, and then we have the agranular leukocytes, as in the monocytes and the lymphocytes. So multipotent stem cells in red bone marrow, they have the potential to give rise to other stem cells for the various formed elements. And these can also differentiate into other cells, other specialized cells like liver cells, bone cells, fat cells, cartilage, heart, and neurons actually. And so that's why they hold a lot of promise in treating many different kinds of conditions. And a patient's own bone marrow stem cells, they could be used to treat diabetes, heart disease, liver disease, or perhaps brain disorders. Some researchers prefer using embryonic stem cells, and this is the one that's quite controversial, highly controversial. But they are sometimes preferred since they can be more likely to become any type of cell. And as is noted here, they can be collected from unused embryos in fertility clinics, also known as abortion clinics, or umbilical cord blood as well. So that can be another source. Controversial for the reason that those opposed to doing this are suggesting that the use of embryonic stem cells can lead to further abortion procedures being carried out for the purpose of just simply harvesting these kinds of cells. On the other hand, persons are suggesting, well, because these fetuses have been discarded anyway, might as well take some of the cells and put them to good use. So a very controversial topic at the moment because of its moral implications, and certainly a lot of debate is going on about that at this time. So as far as the capillary exchange goes, fluid in the blood is called plasma. So when blood reaches a capillary, the movement of the fluid in the blood through the capillary wall is controlled by the osmotic pressure, which causes water to move from the tissue fluid to the blood, and that's largely just simply because of the presence of proteins in the blood, which causes a gradient from um, high concentration of the tissues, of the fluid surrounding the body tissue from the concentration in the blood. So you have lower concentration of water in the blood, so the water then is going to flow from the fluid around the tissues into the capillaries. Also from blood pressure, increasing blood pressure will cause the water to move from the blood to the tissue fluid. So if fluid is needed in the tissues, then blood pressure can be raised in order to bring that about. And here we can see a lot of the exchanges that are taking place between the capillaries and the fluid around around cells, and it's showing quite a few of these as they take place and how they take place. So we have the arterial end of the capillary, so blood pressure is higher there. And so water will exit the capillary at that end. Then midway along the capillary, blood pressure and osmotic pressure, they pretty much cancel each other out, so you don't really have a net movement of water. So then solutes diffuse according to the concentration gradient. Small substances leaving the capillaries, they contribute to the tissue fluid actually. Then we have the venous end of the capillary. Osmotic pressure is greater than blood pressure here, so water moves into the capillary. So excess tissue fluid is collected by the lymphatic capillaries, where it then becomes lymph. And these would be vessels that are actually separate from the arteries and veins, but ultimately the the lymph vessels eventually do drain back into the larger veins. So the fluid then returns back into circulation. So that will end our look at the blood and blood products and some of the movement of materials in and out of the blood.